Good evening. This is Rudy Giuliani, and this is America's Mayor Live. Sorry we're a bit late. A few technical difficulties. I was discussing on the earlier show, uh, the Rudy Giuliani show, as you know, which is also on X, so many of you follow it, and also on Frank Speech Network. I was discussing my adventure in court this morning in a case that is part of the Biden lawfare cases that, as President Trump warned us, they weren't just after him, they were after many other people that supported him and um, uh, were part of his either leadership group or support group or just followers. Well, they must have done 1,000 of these cases. And of course, they've done about 12 to me. And one of them was in court today. And I was discussing the fact that the case that was brought by these two women who were involved in Georgia in counting the votes, the case was brought by a lawyer who at one time was Hunter Biden's partner. And nobody knows that. And not only that, he was part of a law firm known as Boyce Schiller that represented the crooked company, independent of even the Bidens, well known as one of the most crooked companies in as part of the organized crime group in Ukraine. And then all of a sudden, when he heard about these women, he felt so sorry for them that he's now represented them to the tune of about $5 to $10 million of legal work because he feels sorry for them. Not that he's part of the entire network of Biden-supported and Democrat-supported lawsuits against Trump lawyers, Trump loyalists, the cases in Georgia and Arizona and all over the country, the disbarment proceedings. Well, of course, you really believe that this is just coincidence? Now, in saying that, I made a mistake, and I want to apologize for it. I said, I don't know why I said it, but somebody had mentioned this other law firm to me in actually a very, in a very laudatory way today. So I confused the two law firms. I said that he's part of the law firm of Kelly Dry. Now, he's not. He's part of the law firm of Wilkie Farr. So let me apologize to Kelly Dry. You have nothing to do with this, and it's my mistake. And if you want me to correct it for other people, I'm more than happy to do that. I feel very bad that I made that mistake. But I don't feel bad that I now say the right one, which is he's part of the law firm of Wilkie Farr, which is part of the Biden team, part of the team that goes after, has made themselves part of the team by volunteering for this case in order to torture and persecute one of President Trump's top lawyers for a case that they had to know is kind of questionable, since there are tape recordings that pretty much demonstrate the truth of what I said. And the tape recordings, I should tell you, have been seriously altered over the years, but I retained enough of them, and they're out there. They're right now on the internet. I mean, you can go look at them and make up your own mind. So this case is a very, very shaky case. Shaky also to the extent that if I had done what they said I did, which really is opinion, not defamation. It's my opinion that that's what I see. But in any event, if I had done it, 158 million, not a shakedown. I don't know. You make up your own mind about that. But for all this, they're suing me, and they have a judgment, and they want to exercise that judgment before the appeal is decided. The case is on appeal. It hasn't been affirmed on appeal. And they got themselves a Democrat judge in New York whose father was a Democrat. He's a Democrat, appointed by Trump. But in New York, there are two Democrat senators, and there's a deal that is made of 3 Democrats, 1 Republican. And so you have to take judges that are Democrats. So don't impute anything to the fact that he was appointed by President Trump. He comes out of Schumer and what's the woman's name? She never appears. She just got reelected. Nobody even knows she got reelected, which is why I can't remember. Just look up her name. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Nobody remembers her name. Gillibrand. I know her name. But I bet there's nobody out there that knows that she was reelected. I didn't want to give her name because I like to ask people who the senators. A lot of people don't know Schumer either.
Yeah, right.
He's gone out and done those. People don't know the president. I think they know Trump because he's like bigger than life.
Yeah, exactly.
I bet a lot of people that know Biden was the president. They probably thought he was some little old man that sits on a beach. I think there's people who walk by and don't talk to them. But again, let me sincerely apologize to Kelly Dry. It's a fine law firm. I have no reason to have any issue with it. And I think the reason it was in my mind, somebody told me, and I can't repeat it because I think it's probably confidential, but something very laudatory about it today. So why I would confuse it with Wilkie Farr, which is part of the Democrat Biden torture Trump machine, I don't know. But they have, Wilkie Farr has as a partner, Hunter Biden's former partner, and a guy who was a lawyer for Burisma, which is then identified as one of the most crooked organized crime companies in Russia. It's pro-Russian, in Ukraine. It's a pro-Russian Ukrainian company. And I'm the one who revealed all that. So you don't think they have a vendetta against me? I mean, it began from the first day I pointed this all out. They started to put out terrible things about me, telling the press not to talk to me, telling not to put on television. They interfered with my business. They went to my clients. They told my law firm to get rid of me. They just did it with my present lawyer. They threatened my present lawyer, the Wilkie Farr guy, threatened my present lawyer with, you could be disbarred. They do this all the time. Way back in 2020, when we were getting ready for the Philadelphia case, they threatened the chief lawyer in charge of the case. He had to quit the case. And they do this, and we get disbarred. And the bar associations nowhere have ever looked into this charge of intimidating lawyers not to represent Donald Trump or his associates. That's a nationwide scandal that's going on in the bar associations, who have lent themselves to all kinds of left-wing corruption. Well, if you don't think this case is political, let me tell you that the judge in New York has to decide two things. He's got to decide whether I properly gifted my Yankee rings to my son so I don't have to turn it over to them. And he has to decide whether I have a homestead in Florida. Florida has granted me a homestead. Really should be decided by a Florida judge. But this is a Democrat who has not ruled one time in my favor, not even one time. So he wants to try it. The New York judge wants to decide whether I have a Florida homestead. Don't you think that should be done by a federal judge in Florida who can interpret Florida law? Well, he wants to do it. He set the trial down. He set the trial down he could set the trial down anytime he wanted. He set it down for the inauguration of President Trump, so I can't go, which he described as just a mere social occasion. And he also ignored the plea of my counsel, who had to replace my prior counsel because he left the case. Not unusual if you represent a Trump person, that lawyers leave the case. My present lawyer, as soon as he came on, was threatened. But he seems to have a little more courage. But the judges don't listen to this. They think you're making it up, or they don't care because they're They are. This guy has a completely. I can see his pedigree and his background. It's left wing, uh, representing criminals and what do you call that? Public defender stuff and all that other stuff, and a little time in the U.S. Attorney's Office. His father was a very famous criminal defense lawyer who I knew and had a case. He represented Milken in one of my big cases, but he also had a very extreme left wing background. I don't care if you have a left wing background if it doesn't affect your deciding on the bench, but you can't tell me that putting that case down for the exact 3 days in January when the inauguration is going to take place. And then he told my lawyer, who is worried that he just came into the case and has to learn it. He said, "Okay, I'll give you the 2 days before the inauguration." So the poor guy's asking for more time, and he's trying to get him to make a choice between should my client go to the inauguration or should I shave even 2 more days off preparation when I probably need 2 months and 3 months. Like, I'm not getting it. Fair trial, my backside. Hasn't ruled once in my favor. I actually, let's just speak practically. I don't know why I'm having these trials. I know the result of both trials. I've been doing this for 50 plus years. Got a lot more experience than the guy sitting on the bench. I knew what he was going to rule today when I was forced to travel for 5 hours to get there when it could have been done on a Zoom 2 days before Thanksgiving with tremendous traffic. I knew what he was going to rule today. I don't even know why he calls me in there. I know what he's going to rule at the trial. We're going to do discovery. I'm going to have to spend money. Somebody's paying for them. I mean, originally it was Biden's ex-law partner doing it for nothing. Now they got some wacko left-wing group paying them. I know what they're going to rule. Want to bet? Want to bet they rule that I don't have a Florida homestead and I have to give the rings up, that my son has to give up the rings that I gave him? They haven't allowed me absolutely non-interferable items, basic minimums you're allowed to keep if they take everything away from you. They've taken every single one of my watches. The law requires that I get to evaluate one, and if it's less than a certain amount of money, like $500 or something, I get to keep it. I do have watches like that, and I do have expensive watches. They've got them all. I don't have any watches. I have one car. I don't know exactly how much it's worth. When I look online, it seems to me it's worth between 3,000 and 7,000. I'm entitled to keep a car. If it's worth 5,000 or less, if it's worth a little bit more, I can try to find some cash to give them. So I don't have a car. I live in Florida. Just for me, I don't have a checking account. They've frozen all of my checking accounts, even ones they're not entitled to. They froze my Social Security account, and they intimidate banks. Even when they're not entitled to freeze things, they're frozen, and I have trouble being able to get checks or get money out. I can't get a loan, so I have no checking account. They've gotten rid of all my personal credit cards. Uh, and the law says I'm entitled to keep bare minimum of these things. My furniture, I'm allowed to keep my furniture. They took my furniture. I don't know about my clothes. My clothes are presently in the warehouse where everything is that I don't think I have access to it. They do. They're not supposed to get my clothes, but I'm sure he'll give them anything they want. Today, I spoke at the end because my lawyer is a little afraid to take the judge on. The judges do that. They have an intimidating effect. But when they're being entirely unfair and completely inconsistent with the whole tradition of American law and making a vindictive decision because they hate me for being involved with Donald Trump, I can figure it out. I figured it out when I asked him if I could keep my grandfather's watch, which is 140 years old, and he said no. I took a grandfather's watch away from a man in a bodega. I'll take it away from you. My lawyer didn't have the guts to say, geez, that's pretty mean. Why don't you learn to be kind? Makes a much better judge. What's the difference? One watch. He's entitled to one watch. Want to get this one evaluated? I mean, it means a lot to him. It may not be that expensive a watch. You know, you're not supposed to do it without evaluating it. You're not supposed to take his car without evaluating. You're just breaking the law, Judge, and acting in this hypocritical, usual Democrat. We're smarter and we're more honest than you, when in fact they're not. They're just the opposite. Judges can be disagreed with. We can even be sarcastic with them. They're not God. Some think they are. And some think they're liberal, left-wing gods. And some of them agree with the Democrats who think we're garbage. And we're not entitled to have a watch, even though the law says we are. Or we're not entitled to go to the inauguration of a friend for 39 years who I've given a good deal of my life to get him reelected or elected. And kind of the American people agreed with me, not the Wilkie far left-wing law firm that's now part of the Biden hit machine or the left-wing judge. But again, in January, when the inauguration is on, he will hold these two trials. I mean, why does he just write the opinion beforehand? I think he may have had the ones today written before. It looked like he was reading them. Well, let's get off me. I'm just a little upset because of what happened today and because I know it's happening to other people, and I know it's going to probably happen to you if we don't change this right away. So far, it hasn't been changed. Well, Joe Biden really should be the hell out of the White House. Do you realize in just a few days, he's done really some ridiculous things? He's just now all very excited about a ceasefire with Lebanon. Is Israel at war with Lebanon? They need a ceasefire with Lebanon. Don't they need one with Hezbollah and Hamas? I mean, Lebanon tried to stay neutral in the whole situation with Hezbollah, and it is true when Israel finally attacked, they hit some Lebanese targets, which I think was was unplanned. It just happened because it happened to be there. And I guess a ceasefire of the little bit of action they've had together is worth it, but it's not worth this big. We have a ceasefire between two countries that shot at each other twice, probably by mistake. Meanwhile, there's no ceasefire with Hezbollah, and there's no ceasefire with Hamas, and there isn't going to be one because they're demanding a two-state solution. And they're really demanding the end of the state of Israel, which nobody agrees to. Nobody agrees to end their state. This is like, one of those games. Where did I put the penny, huh? Or the little P? But there really is no P because I put it under here. They're just a bunch of crooks. And it's what distorts our justice system, so we don't have a justice system anymore. You think if I were a Democrat, they'd put me through this? Of course not. They'd give me an award if I pointed out that a Republican was involved in 40 years of crime, and that he took about 50 million that his son has written out, that 30% of his income went to his father for 30 years. Yet you don't know that because they cover it up, but it's right there in the hard drive. So is the involvement of this lawyer Gottlieb in the hard drive, the guy who's suing me. But nobody bothers to look at it. So Biden also Biden also in the last week, right, has altered a year and a half, 2 years of practice in holding up Ukraine from bombing Russia, and on the way out, he's bombing Russia, which I don't think will, but at least it's remotely possible he could start a wider war. What the hell do you want to start a wider war as you're going out of office and the other guy's got to handle it? If you were going to win this war, you should have done it a year ago. And what you're doing is not going to win the war. Bombing a couple of targets 100 or 200 miles into Russia is hardly going to have Russia seek an armistice, right? They're not going to put up a white flag because you bombed them a couple of times with missiles that can go 300 miles instead of 150 miles. So they hit you back with intercontinental ballistic missiles, which is like an order of magnitude 10 times higher. And it's hard to complain that they did it. Now they've got, I don't know how many troops trying to hit Kursk and take it back from, and killing a lot of people. They got the North Koreans coming in, willing to be, I guess, targets. So you just widen the war as you left, and you've added incredible numbers to the people that you, Joe Biden, and cackling Kamala have killed because of your ineptitude, your ideology. In the case of Joe, combination of your stupidity and imbecility, and in the case of Harris, your stupidity. And finally, the fact that you were fraudulently elected, and you were. In fact, we should all say that you were fraudulent. It's embarrassing that we elected you if we did. Wow. You know, one of Biden's judges, I pointed out on the other show, but I want to tell you, he's got 24, 25 judges that Schumer's going to push through between now and the end of the session, which is the end of the year. And we made a deal with them and we stopped like 4 of them. We got 4 judges for 27. Republicans in the Senate. Are there Republicans in the Senate, Ted?
Maybe a small handful.
Why don't we block them? Why do they get 27 appointments right at the very end? Why don't we get those appointments? Particularly when they're likely to put a person like John S. Cato Cruz on the phone. Good old Cato Cruz in Colorado, who probably is not a pot smoker, but it doesn't matter because everybody in Colorado is walking around like this. So he has this team called San Jose State, and they're going to play in a tournament. And they have a man who has a skirt on who plays on the ladies' volleyball team. But he also has the one distinguishing feature, and which in my view indisputably makes him a man. He has a penis, and he puts a skirt on top of the penis so he can get into the men's room and the ladies' room and the ladies' locker. And he's also a lot bigger and stronger than the girls, and he can smash the volleyball down on their face and break their teeth, which has actually happened. Well, 2 schools sued, refused to play them, Boise State and Utah State, and they got penalized. And this other school was the lady who was going to object, Melissa Batty Smoose, was threatened and told to keep quiet. And then they went to court, and the judge said they were discriminating against the guy wearing a skirt who has a penis. by not letting him play with women. I mean, like at the boxing in the Olympics, right? Where they allowed the males to box, and that Italian boxer was very, very smart, saying, "The hell with this! I'm not getting my face smashed up by some guy." That's called abuse. That's called domestic violence. What's wrong with us? I mean, I know when the president says common sense, that does say it, but this is moral depravity. It really is moral depravity when you do this. And that he'll appoint, most of the judges he'll appoint will be like, oh, the one he put on the Supreme Court. Can you define a woman? I'm not a biologist. They don't teach us that in school. And it's hard enough learning the 57 genders. Takes all 4 years of college for that. We don't learn math either. I'll tell you why. You just got results on algebra, and I'll show you what they were. We'll be right back.
We're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50%, and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
This is Rudy Giuliani back with you on America's Mayor Live. U.S. Navy Corporal and Sheriff's Officer Lori Wood adored the camaraderie of her law enforcement family and being a part of something bigger than herself. We all do, don't we? Having the opportunity to educate and mentor aspiring law officers and impact the next generation of professionals was rewarding, and Lori took great pride in it. One day, while going over drills with recruits of the academy, Lori fell from the roof of a mock village. She sustained a T10/T12 burst fracture, leaving her with paraplegia. Her recovery was very difficult as she learned to navigate her new normal. But she remained resilient and she maintained a positive attitude. Thanks to supporters like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Lori and her son Gavin the gift of a specially adapted, mortgage-free smart home. The modifications made to Lori's home allow her to adapt to living in a two-story home in a more accessible and inclusive way. Lori wants you to know that she is fiercely independent at her core, and the assistant of Tunnel to Towers, made possible by friends like you, has allowed her to keep that part of herself. Help heroes like Lori and their families. Donate $11 a month to T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. It's Thanksgiving time. This is a time to be generous, isn't it? And this is a time to thank God for the blessings we have. And here on earth, the work of God is done by people. So let's thank you, okay? With an $11 contribution. Don't you love Homan, Tom Homan? Don't you get the feeling that no matter how tough the job is, combination of him and Donald Trump, like, the sanctuary city punks are terrible. You know, well, one of them is talking about, I don't know if it's in Colorado. The mayor of Denver is talking about he's going to get people and line them up as a city. And when they come to take the illegals, all the citizens will be there and they'll have to go through this. Isn't that a crime? You're going to interfere with the work of federal officers enforcing warrants? Isn't that federal crime? Why don't they come in first? Why don't they get those FBI agents that they dress up like stormtroopers to frighten Roger Stone and Papadopoulos and the little old lady who is pro-life? Why don't they get them? Why don't they do something legitimate finally and arrest all these people if they're going to? I bet you arrest one of them, they'll all go away. So Holman says, I used this term once about rioting, and they never did. Don't test me. No, he said, don't test us. And you look at him and you say to yourself, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Meanwhile, Glenn Youngkin is telling people, you'll appreciate this because Ted worked in Washington, I worked in Washington. One time I worked in Washington, the Ford administration, I lived in Virginia, and one time I lived in D.C. So Youngkin is saying, he's great. You really should live in Virginia. Well, it's the closest thing you got to a Republican anything there. I mean, District of Columbia is 98% Democrat. Right.
That's right.
You know how it can be 98%, but they say it is. And the juries haven't acquitted a Republican since before Lincoln. They probably would have acquitted John Wilkes Booth.
Yeah.
So
That's right. That's funny.
So what are the benefits of living in Virginia to living in? I haven't lived in Washington since 1983.
Taxes. One of them was taxes.
Taxes.
That's one.
Less crime.
Crime.
DC per capita is, oh God, I may be low here. There's a 5-time greater chance you'll be victim of a homicide in DC than in New York. Maybe even more than that. DC is a much more dangerous city than New York. You probably didn't know that.
And I feel that. I've lived in both.
But it wasn't as bad when I lived there. And you know, up on Capitol Hill, if you live within a certain block or two of the Capitol, you got the benefit of the Capitol Police when they were fair and honest and not run by Nancy Pelosi creating riots that shouldn't have been created.
Right.
You got the benefit of the Capitol Police that would patrol your block.
Right.
And it was safer than the rest of Washington. But now crime is, I mean, Washington's one of the top crime cities in the country. That's a terrible thing for our national capital. So I guess that's what Youngkin is talking about when he put out this, where he put out this thing. He put out like a circular to come. Trump staffers should all live in Virginia. It's cheaper. It's safer.
Oh, that's true. It's sad, but it's true. I was in AVR.
And then maybe we can win.
Yeah, that too.
But we got people living there, right?
Yeah, well, especially Trump staffers, not Republican staffers. There's a difference.
The president has demanded that the New York Times apologize for being wrong. I didn't even bother to figure out what he's asking them to apologize for being wrong about. But that's like my thinking that Judge Lyman will rule for me. The Times is never wrong, Mr. President, because the Times is always wrong. It can possibly admit being wrong because it would have to admit it had no right to exist. Remember, I told him this once. President Reagan used to tell his people, and he said it in front of me twice. I do read the New York Times every day. I read it very carefully. I absorb it, and I take it seriously. And then I do exactly the opposite. It has a function. Anything they do the opposite, it'll be very pro-American. It'll be very patriotic. And it'll be very morally a good thing to do because they kind of support the amoral, immoral Marxist state. Right? I mean, they're in favor of women getting the shit kicked out of them by make-believe women who are really men beating on them in volleyball or basketball or boxing, even. So now that they don't have, our friend Matt Gaetz to push around anymore, who are their big targets, Ted? Who would you say their biggest target is? Is it Pete? Is it RFK Jr.?
It was Matt Gaetz, of course. Matt.
Oh yeah, but
Matt did the selfless, what I would consider an extremely selfless act of removing himself for what he said was, to avoid being a distraction for the incoming administration. Hegseth for sure. This man served his country honorably, bravely,
when you
courageously.
say for sure, you think he's number one over RFK?
Oh no, sorry. You're good point. You reminded me. RFK, and we talked about this, and you were able to articulate it much better than I. RFK is facing a much deeper pocketed lobby, right? He's going up against, at least they'll look at it this way, right? As him going up against Big Pharma, who, I mean, their pockets are so.
You think RFK Jr. has any remaining support in the Democrat Party, or do they view him as a traitor?
A small percentage, I would say, of folks that remember him as a kid or remember his father, the old Kennedy Democrats.
They love
There's
him.
yeah, the environmentalists, wackos, they might be bad. I can't call them wackos anymore because they're voters.
When he was going to be named to the Obama cabinet, they thought it was like an ingenious pick. He hasn't changed very much since then. Well, that's not true. You know what happened in between the two? He became radicalized in a different way because of the pandemic. And he got to see, if you read his book carefully, and I've talked to him a bit, not at great length, but enough, he sees something that a lot of people don't really see, even good people. They don't see it completely. He sees the length and breadth of just how crooked the Democratic Party has become. It isn't just the deep state. There is a deep state, and it's beyond the Democratic Party.
Oh, yeah.
The military-industrial complex, the pharmaceuticals, the lobbyists. Because we're Republicans and we say the Democratic Party is corrupt, a lot of people don't believe us. They say, well, the Republican Party is corrupt too, but not in the same way. It's a different kind of thing. Republican Party is opportunistically and by exception corrupt. In other words, it's not the core of the party. It's not the raison d'etre for the party. The Democrat Party, going back to the beginning, has had a real core of people that are in politics to make money. And they think it's their entitlement to make money. It's a bit like the Ukrainians, which is why they get along so well. You can have Ukrainians that say, well, you're giving all the money to the Ukrainians. This is to fight a war. They never take it away from the war. Well, they'll take it away from their starving people. What do you mean the war? And they'll go fight the war. They just figure they're entitled to half the money. Give them 10 bill, they'll keep 5 for themselves and 5 for the war. They may even go out and fight the war. It's just a different mentality. Democrats think public office is about making money. Now, not all, but enough in the party so it's systemic. So it goes on from generation to generation to generation to generation, particularly in the old cities. In New York, corruption goes back to the 1830s, virtually uninterrupted, except by a couple of independent and Republican administrations. I don't know. The only ones I can count on in the 20th century are LaGuardia, me, and as a personally honest person, Koch. But he had a horribly corrupt administration. Nobody knows it better than me. I put him in jail. So he got to see that. He got to see how corrupt they are. Remember when he was still running as a Democrat or independent or whatever, and he said, they're saying this stuff about Trump taking away democracy. The real threat to democracy are Biden and Harris. The stuff they were saying Trump might do, they were doing. Trump will prosecute his enemies. Well, they just prosecuted 1,000 of their enemies, including people get even with the people. Well, they just did that. And then they did a lot of other things, like you can't tell me that Joe didn't have a lot of contracts he had to fulfill, like giving up Bagram and not going after China on COVID and on and on. China doesn't fork over 30 million for nothing. They're not like a great philanthropic institution. It's a crooked party at the top, particularly, but also in the cities. New York, crooked as hell. Chicago, crooked and insane. The mayor of Chicago, it sounds like he's insane. What do they find him? Philadelphia, I don't know the mayor, but Kruger, the DA, the Soros DA, 2 years of homicide records, and he's still the DA. Somebody's paying off to keep him there. Actually, I'm going to say something about the Philadelphia political party. I'm always attacking Philadelphia, and I will because I think they cheat on elections. But you know, Ted, that the party regulars in Philadelphia didn't want to renominate Kruger, the Soros guy. This goes back about 6 or 8 years.
That's right.
Soros's first intervention was in Philadelphia, and he elected this guy, Krasner. Krasner's name. He elected this guy, Krasner, who was the brag of his day. I'm not going to put people in jail. Jail makes people worse. The cops are terrible. The cops make all bad arrests. The cops just beat up black people. Blah, 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 blah. He becomes the DA. After 2 years, the cops virtually go on this like quiet strike, and they're refusing to bring cases to him because he's turning down more than half of them, putting the criminals back in the street. Somebody beats up a woman, he's back in the street so he can go find another woman to beat up. Within 3 or 4 years, now, you want solid proof that I'm right? They set a record for the most homicides in the history of Philadelphia. Not a lot of homicides, the most homicides in the history of Philadelphia, 2 years in a row under this DA. So now comes re-election. The party bosses, and this is a crooked city, but these guys have to live there. And they don't go, when they kill you, they don't say, oh, this looks like a Democratic Party boss, I'm not going to kill him. You don't wear like a thing on you. I'm a Democratic Party boss, don't kill me. They kill you too, and your kids. They wouldn't renominate him. That would never happen in New York because we're even more crooked than they are. We would renominate him. We're going to renominate Bragg for sure. The Democratic Party has the guts to not nominate Bragg. But they decided not to renominate. They wanted to live. Soros put $4 million in and beat the shit out of him. He beat the party. And Krasner's there, and crime in Philadelphia is awful, and crime in Philadelphia is awful. Don't feel bad, Philadelphia. New York is awful. I don't think in my whole life I'd ever say that. And I only say it because I love the people in New York. And somebody's got to be realistic with them. And somebody's got to do an intervention with them. They keep voting Democrat. One district in Manhattan voted for Trump. In a year in which, in almost every place, Trump got more votes, including the rest of New York. I'm talking about not the ones even that he won, but even where he lost, like in Los Angeles or in Philadelphia or in Atlanta. He did better. In New York City, he did the same or worse. And not New York City. He did better in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx. He did. He did better and of course, he won Staten Island, but that's different. Staten Island is Republican. But he did the same or worse in Manhattan. He won only one district. I don't even think it's a district. He won an apartment house, a Chinese apartment house. And he won at 51-49. And then they take a poll on Bragg, and Bragg is ahead. Los Angeles and San Francisco just threw out their brags, and they threw out one of those cities threw out a mayor that's a left-wing kook job. Chicago and New York, no such movement. I think it's much more ingrained, and we got a much greater brainwashing disease of voting Democrat. I mean, if we reelect Hochul, all of New York should be given psychiatric treatment. I guess you could be a worse governor, but you'd have to really work at it. Well, the party is falling apart. There's no question about it. But as we contemplate that, and we contemplate one of the best holidays of the year, and we do have something this year to be thankful about, don't we? Last year we prayed, so we'd be thankful for this year. This year we can be thankful for it because all the things I'm talking about because we put them on the agenda to change. But we got the realistic possibility of changing it. I have Tom Homan's picture. I just look at his picture, and he looks to me like Patton. I had the husband of a cousin-in-law, right, who fought under Patton. And he said, all Patton had to do was stand up, and you stood up, and you were ready to die. Whatever he wanted. He said his magnetism and his ability to lead men to do things that they'd be afraid to do because he was so brave, and you'd be embarrassed not to be brave in front of him, was unreal, which is why he was the only general the Germans really feared. Well, we'll be right back after this very important message.
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
This is Rudy Giuliani back with you on America's Mayor Live. And I do think it's appropriate that we talk about Thanksgiving and all of the attacks. Am I correct? Or I remember last year and the year before, both on my TV and radio show, before I left ABC because they wouldn't let me talk about the 2020 election. And can you imagine not letting me talk about the 2020 election? In retrospect, how deep into our free speech rights those crumbs got. Boy, we got to come out of that. And I know we will. I know we will. And I think the presence of Elon Musk gives me a great deal of confidence that President Trump will have the support for that, because nobody seems to get it more than Musk does as to how much the free speech rights of this country were jeopardized. But what do you think about this Thanksgiving? I'm going to ask Ted first. Ted is busily tweeting something out here. You want me to ask Stephen first?
Go to Stephen first and then come to me.
Then give him the microphone. Don't be a creep and keep the microphone. So, Ted doesn't want to say anything, but he doesn't want to let anybody else talk. So he keeps the microphone, and they have to talk from far away, and you can't hear them. Right?
Yes, sir.
He's like that. You've known him.
Ted's kind of liberal with the microphone. You know, he lets people on.
Very specific there, though. Liberal with the
Yes, with the microphone. Yes.
No, Ted would never accuse Ted of being a liberal.
No. A deep plant Democrat operative.
You all know we're working with one camera tonight, so we can't show you Stephen. But you remember Stephen? He's been on a lot, and he also has done a couple of those things on the road for us that were very, very colorful and really very well done.
Oh, thank you, sir. It was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun doing
and
it.
he contributed my co-host last night, Raleigh.
Oh yeah, I think Raleigh's taking a nap over there. Raleigh, are you taking a nap? Oh yeah, he's knocked out. Well, we've been tired. We've been moving around a lot.
Raleigh took his first trip to New York City today.
Yeah,
and he walked around the streets of New York City.
Yeah, and the elevator was what tripped him out going up.
I was gonna bring him with me to court, saying he was my comfort dog. See if he could bark at the judge when the judge was being unfair to me. He'd have barked for the entire session.
Yeah.
We could have at least won something.
He's a good judge of character. He would have figured it out. He would have done it.
Should have like played along with us and let us win something.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I don't know why he wants to do the hearing on the inauguration time. I mean, it's like. Let me see if I can be obvious. And this is a political case. The lawyer was Hunter Biden's lawyer. The lawyer worked for the most crooked company in Ukraine that you uncovered. And I don't want you to go to the inauguration. And I don't want you to be prepared, which of course is really, there should be a practical way that we just say without prejudicing ourselves, okay, judge, just write your opinion. We won't even show up. I mean, I could
hold out hope. I hear what you're saying, but you got to think that they'll realize eventually that
intervention.
Perhaps some of these operatives are going to be feeling the pressure from their clients who don't want to have a terrible relationship with the Trump administration.
What about the law firm?
It's one whole big operation from my standpoint, almost.
Wilkie Farr. Yeah. Well, Wilkie Farr is a operating like a Biden apparatchik.
Absolutely.
You might as well be part of the Biden fear campaign. They even threatened Joe, my lawyer. You know that. They threatened Joe and told him he could get disbarred. And
that's a lot of pressure.
They have, I don't mean just Wilkie Farr, but Wilkie Farr and the firms like them have frightened at least 100 lawyers off cases, and the Bar Association pays no attention to it because it helps Democrats. You can violate ethical rules, you can violate laws. If it helps Democrats, fine. Well, now, how about Thanksgiving? What do you think of this Thanksgiving?
What do I think of this?
Yeah, you think it's better than other Thanksgivings?
Yes. Well, I do. I think that we're going to have a lot to be thankful for. We already do, actually. And being out east is an interesting, place to see.
Yeah.
Right. So, a lot to be thankful for. President Trump's the president. Yeah, that keeps.
Look how hard you work. Look how hard you work. You believe it's even over?
See, that's the thing. I feel like we're still in the go mode.
It takes a month at least to get over it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But you were on the road. Ted and I were on the road somewhat. We were at the Democratic convention. We were at the Republic. We were at the Democratic convention. That was funny with Mike. And Mike was getting into fights with them.
That was some of the most fun I've ever had in my life. Was at that one. And then you called into our trainings in Trump Force 47 in Michigan.
Great.
That was cool.
They were great.
They loved it. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how much they loved it. People are still talking about that. That was one of the best ones. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I'll go say it. That was the best one in Oakland County.
So let's ask a political question. How did Mike Rogers lose? And how much did he lose by in comparison to Trump's win?
What are we at? About 100? Oh,
150, 120.
About 100. Anyway, so I think that there were a lot of coalition issues with regard to who Trump could reach and who Rogers couldn't reach. We had a lot of the Muslim majority areas willing to receive Trump's message of peace, but didn't really buy that Rogers was a part of that. Rogers was running his own campaign, and to his credit, he had a good operation in place, like regional directors, a canvassing operation, but it's kind of a little bit more on the messaging side of things. And, and that's the thing too, a lot of the GOP base, like the real grassroots base, saw Rogers as a never Trumper, honestly, and didn't know how he got the endorsement. And because he was bashing him on CNN quite a bit.
When
Oh,
earlier,
like in his throughout his career, throughout the first Trump administration, and then beyond in the meantimes, yeah. So yeah, that's why the endorsement surprised everyone. But I guess the view was that like we needed to coalesce. If you remember, we had like 13 candidates at one point running for Senate in Michigan, and we had to they wanted to narrow the field down somehow. And Rogers had the money already, and so yeah, so that's one of the things that happened there. Ted might be able to add a little bit on that.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Stephen. Go ahead.
Oh, and then also Slotkins of just a popular name down in the Metro Detroit area, and so some people were comfortable voting for Slotkin.
a very close vote, though, right?
It was
A
depends what you call close. Everything's close these days, you know.
Is that
Everything
true?
that matters. Yes.
Michigan was closer than some of the other states, right? Like Pennsylvania, he won Pennsylvania by like 3 or 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought he would win Pennsylvania by the most. I thought it would be Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan.
Yeah.
I just think, believe it or not, Pennsylvania has become more of a Republican state over the last 4 years. And maybe it's the result of the cheating that the press denies, but everybody in Pennsylvania knows. I bet that had a lot to do with Republicans registered many more people than Democrats.
See, that's the thing. We were so much more organized and so much more efficient this cycle.
Michigan was better organized too.
Michigan was, oh yeah. Well, I think the thing is you can see by the level of investment in these campaigns that we had the resources we needed, right? It was just a matter of like making it happen. So yeah, we're investing hard, going hard, and then having a big paid effort. And then I'm sure a lot of people follow the Amish saga out in Pennsylvania with Scott.
They voted for Trump, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But didn't they start voting for Trump like back in 2016? They started coming out and voting for the first time.
Yeah, yes. And that's what got, I think, the Scott Pressler initiative like kind of really going, was that you see that promise.
Yeah.
And then you see how the government kind of intrudes into their lives and prevents them from drinking their raw milk and regulating their farms. They're just simple folks, right? And hardworking, and they don't want the government in their lives telling them what they can and can't believe. And then the woke nonsense just doesn't land with them whatsoever.
Oh my God.
So,
oh my God.
Imagine telling
women, you're not a man, you're not a woman. Oh my God.
Imagine telling that to like, you know,
gender adjustment for Amish. It's like for Orthodox. You know, there's that scene in Witness, the movie Witness, which is quite old, but still one of the great movies with Harrison Ford, and he's tracking a killer, and they think he's the killer, but he ends up hiding out in an Amish village, and he falls in love with an Amish girl, but there's one scene at the Philadelphia train station when 3 or 4 Amish guys pass 3 or 4 Hasidic guys. And they look at each other like, that's a lot of like, who are you?
Yeah. That's funny. That's funny.
Get that scene for tomorrow night, Ted.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Which
Witness.
I think both communities went for Trump, though, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, the Hasidic community, I think I got pretty close to 100% of them.
That's what I would guess too.
They have different rebbes for different communities. The most famous one was Rabbi Shearston, who died while I was mayor, who President Trump visited his grave during the campaign toward the end. And there are very, very religious Hasidim who believe he's like the Messiah. He's going to come back.
We could use it. We could use it, honestly. Well,
I knew him. He blessed me the first time I ran for mayor. And when I went to see him, you sit around a big table and everybody hunches over and prays. And all of a sudden we finished and he blessed me, but it was like in Hebrew. And he handed me a dollar bill. Okay. And I handed him back the dollar bill. I just had been U.S. attorney. I was just out like 6 months. I never took money from anybody. So I handed it back to him. And my Jewish advisor and campaign manager, they banged me in the back. "Oh, what are you doing? That's an insult." I said, "I don't know why. I shouldn't take his money." And he smiles. He was an old man. This is about 4 or 5 years before he died. He's a very old man. He's a beautiful man. You could tell he was like a saint. He was like a beautiful man. And he just smiled. And he said in almost broken English, but I could understand him, "This is why I like him. He has great integrity. He misunderstood. That's why he gave it back to me. But he misunderstood for very, very good reasons in his heart." Wow, I almost started. And he said, "But it's okay, son. It's okay for you to take it. This is how we bless." And then he put a second dollar on top of it. And they told me no politician had ever gotten $2 from.
Wow.
Well, I got the entire community. Every time I would go to that community, it was everybody come out of their houses. They sometimes hurt each other because they crowd together. It's like a fun kind of thing. They sort of bang into each other out of enthusiasm, not out of violence or anything.
Of intrigue. Yeah, I love it. One of my colleagues is a Hasidic Jew, and he it's like talking to someone with a PhD in the Old Testament.
Oh,
They can go so deep.
I had a client who was Hasidic, and when we weren't working on a case, we would talk about theology because I studied to be a priest.
Yep.
And it was fascinating, fascinating. And there's a second group of Hasidim, much smaller. The group, they've changed their minds now, but this group was anti-Israel at the beginning. There were certain, some people think it's all of Hasidim. Not true, anti-Israel. But a small group of Hasidim were anti-Israel on the theory that you can't go back to Jerusalem until the Messiah will lead you back to Jerusalem. It's impertinent and it's wrong to go back to Israel before the Messiah comes. So they were opposed to it. There's a movie about this too, and a play. And they're called, one of the groups that's like that, not anymore, but they were called Satmars. Satmars. Now, here's the funny thing. They're called Satmars because they come from a town in Hungary. And the name of the town in Hungary is Satmari. You know what Satmari means in Hungarian? Saint Mary. They're named for Saint Mary.
Oh, wow.
They're named for a Catholic saint. And they're a Jewish Hasidic group. And the Rebbe knew it, but a lot of the Satmaris don't know it. My client didn't know it. And when I told him that, he said, "Do you think we have to change the name?"
Oh my gosh.
No, I don't think you have to change.
Well, that's that beautiful cultural blend you get out of Eastern Europe, though. Oh, St. Mary's Jewish group. What?
The Satmaris.
Yeah.
All right, Ted. It's your turn now.
I'm in the hot seat.
You're in the hot seat?
Yeah.
So tell us your views on Thanksgiving. You remember last Thanksgiving, we were praying for a victory, right?
Yeah.
And it was before it started to look like he was going to win, but before, we always believed he would win, but it wasn't obvious until after they started indicting him, right?
Not yet. Now we thought we were very confident, right, in his ability to put together a winning campaign. But you're right. At this point last year, we didn't, we still didn't have a handle on things, on whether they, how far they'd go in stealing it. The media was totally covering for Biden at this point, right?
Right.
You were early on this, using the DSM-5 and talking to experts. You were early on this. You called Biden's exit from the presidency.
Oh no,
years ago.
I never thought he'd make it through 4 years. I always thought they were running the risk, and I don't understand as professional politicians that he could just blank out. Now, he didn't do that, but he effectively blanked out at the debate.
100%.
But I used to ask doctors this, because I knew some cases of dementia and Alzheimer's. Doesn't there come a day in which you're doing okay and then you can't talk anymore?
Yes.
Absolutely. So when is that going to come from Biden? They would say to me, nobody knows. So how do you take that risk? You nominate him, you decide he's going to be the candidate, 2 years before, Now you got 2 years in which at any time he could go.
Right. And at this time, so my point there, Mayor, was you saw it. I kind of saw it just through you. A lot of the American people had no clue, right? So they were under the impression, okay, it's a right. They were still under the impression that it was a right-wing conspiracy.
So the
that Joe
press
Biden
is
was
so
out of it.
good at lying to them. They couldn't see that he had an obvious case of severe dementia.
Not
When
enough
he'd
people.
fall down going up the stairs, fall down coming down the stairs. Think he was in Colombia when he was in Cambodia. I mean,
Enough, yeah.
think that he was talking to his uncle and his grandfather 5 years after they were dead.
Anyone that paid attention and had saw
For the dead congresswoman in the crowd a week after she died.
Anyone that saw those clips and the totality of that would say, yes, right, this guy is clearly has some issues. If you witnessed all that and saw all that and didn't think, if you thought anything else, you would be either lying to yourself or accepting that and making the decision that I have such bad Trump derangement syndrome, I'm going to vote for that anyway. So, but there's also a large chunk of the population that just never, they're not paying attention to this as closely as we are, right?
Mhm.
So they just hear the mainstream media. One, they don't see the Biden gaffes because the media doesn't cover them. And two, they're told by the mainstream media and late night television and the call that Joe Biden's this, fun uncle, right? Or he was going to bring
The fun uncle who's sitting up in the room.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But enough people, right? Even a year ago, Thanksgiving, this time last year, we were praying for a victory, understanding that it was still looking like
But still,
an uphill
there were a lot
battle.
of obstacles, and always
right.
afraid that they would do some horrible thing because they've tried about 4 or 5 strategies to destroy him. Hiding the hard drive, Russian collusion, the conversation with the Ukrainian president, stealing, and J6, which we have to unravel this year. J6, it was a completely, at least you should be at the stage now where you realize it was a completely way out of line.
That's right.
Exaggeration. I'm going to tell you what it really was a totally contrived event, but at least you should be able to see the part of it that we haven't been able to dig out all the evidence of.
That's right. But going back to your question, Mayor, Thanksgiving, the meaning of Thanksgiving, I can't wait to for your Thanksgiving episode this year to see how you interpret Thanksgiving. And I've learned this from you, spending so much time with you recently. This war on religion, and we talk about the war on Christmas. There's been an effort, and it goes back to even my time in school, to take away the Christian themes, being thankful to God, right? The pilgrims, and the meaning of Thanksgiving, and the role that God, I feel, does play in Thanksgiving, and that they were for the.
I especially prayed to him over and over again to not let us down. That he always seems at the worst times to pick the right person for us, and Trump had a lot going against him. I'm sorry if I say it this way and it spooks some people out, but all the forces of evil were against him. And it only had to be God that pulled him through. And then all of a sudden that shooting took place. And you have to, if you're religious, you have to attribute that to God. If you're not, you attribute it to chance or good luck. But if you're religious, well, that's God's intervention when he does intervene in society. I mean, he was this close to being killed, and he looked the other way, and
That's right. And so I'm this year thankful, of course, for you, Mayor, and for the re-election of President Trump. So I'm thankful that our show is now going to be entering next week our 110th straight week. So I'm thankful for that. But we'll go over what we're thankful for as we get closer to Thanksgiving. I think your question was a bit shorter.
Put a little list together.
Yeah.
Right?
I like that idea.
Night before Thanksgiving, and I'll tell you some Thanksgiving stories. Maybe we can get some pictures tomorrow night of the thing that I enjoyed more than the Thanksgiving parade, which was the blowing up of the balloons on 79th Street and right around the Museum of Natural History on the two side streets. Macy's blows up all the balloons to about half the night before, and then they blow the whole thing up. Caveat, it's supposed to be a big storm, which could mean no parade. I mean, there are certain levels that they, for example, if there's too much wind, the balloons are taken down quite a bit, but they'll still have the parade, but they won't be up that high. And then there's a level at which you just can't have the parade. And that they're thinking that may be that bad this year. So we'll have to see what Thanksgiving Day is going to be like. But there's a storm heading to the northeast. And I don't know if it's coming. We're up in New Hampshire, so we don't know if it's coming up here. Maybe we'll take, at some point this weekend, a ride to Plymouth again and take some pictures.
I would like, yeah, that would be nice.
For the first Thanksgiving.
We should do that, yeah.
Well, I want to thank all of you for listening in tonight, and I apologize for spending much time on my own case, but I'm a little I knew exactly what he was going to do. I know what he's going to do next time. It just disappoints me because I believe so much in justice, and not just for me, for everybody else. And I almost feel like I can take it because I've lived through it, and I know I'm going to come out of it. I know it. But I think about people that don't have the resources, and I don't just mean financial or don't have too many of those right now. I mean the emotional resources that I have. Boy, they just pound on people. Like when the lawyers left the cases, I almost always couldn't be mad at them. I mean, I have two kids, Mayor. I just can't. Your kids are grown up already. Yeah, it's okay for you. And I would say, I know. We'll find somebody else. Somewhere in my heart, I kind of felt like, well, they wouldn't make my list of profiles in courage. Let's put it that way. But they wouldn't make my list of villains either. And but you can't believe what they did. They don't allow you to tell the story, really, because we've got to do it on these networks. And then I guess people think you're self-interested and I got to tell you, whatever I would describe to you about this, it's even worse than that. Well, we will be back with you tomorrow. The people of Israel deserve special prayers because, again, ceasefire is a con job. People of Ukraine are in a stalemate where they just die and the Russians die. So pray for them. People of Iran want to be free. Right moves, and 2 years from now, we'll be celebrating Iranian freedom. I will live up to the promise I've made maybe 8 times in speeches I've given to people in Tehran, saying, using the old Jewish next year in Jerusalem, next year in Tehran. And of course, we're going to thank God for what he did for us and the wisdom he gave us to make the choice that we made. And we're going to ask for his help. And we're going to tell him we're not going to let him down. We're going to accomplish something with what you did for us. So we'll see you tomorrow night at 7 on Frank's Speech and X. And then we'll see you at 8 right here. And who knows where we'll be or what kind of background we'll have. Exciting, right? God bless America. The principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God-given common sense. So let's do it.
Yeah, go a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's no.
Oh yeah.
Even that's like enough to like help.
That's like too much almost.
Then we can keep it like this.
Yeah.
Then you can hang up. We can get around them. I'm gonna get to bed, or sooner than later, right? Or you want
No, whatever.
exactly. But
We're having the biggest